But let me welcome everybody. My name is Bing Jin. I'm the head of product and customer success here at SearchStax, the leading Solr as a service solution. Thank you again for tuning into our customer webinar series. Today, our guests are from Bio-Techne. Our webinar is about building and managing a million-plus record catalog in Drupal. The system supports multi-site, and at its heart, it's an Apache Solr-powered Drupal e-commerce solution. I'd like to say a little bit about Bio-Techne. Bio-Techne is a leading developer and manufacturer of high-quality reagents, instruments, and testing services. They're dynamic, they're rapidly growing, they're headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today, we're really excited to have with us Peter Samland and Dustin Pogue. They're both really smart guys who are doing some really cool technology things, and we're really honored to have them with us. Just a couple of more words about Peter and Dustin. So Peter is Senior Manager, Product Systems and Development Operations. He's been at Bio-Techne for over 4 years. He runs the information team there. The team manages all of the cloud infrastructure and application monitoring. Dustin Pogue is System Developer. He's also been at Bio-Techne for a bit over 4 years, primarily focused around .NET applications, Drupal, Solr, and optimizing the heck out of all these things. So with that, one quick note about questions. Please hold all your questions for the end of the presentation. Feel free to chat them to me via the screen sharing app. And you can also ask them verbally or orally at the end. So without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to Peter and Dustin.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. So let me give you, Bing's introduction for what a Bio-Techne is correct. From my perspective, we're a science company that sells all kinds of biological components. If I don't think of them like T-shirts, it gets really, really tough. But it's a fun space. So a little background. I think we need to paint a picture of kind of where we came from to understand, help understand some of the decisions we made, why we needed to make those decisions at those specific times, and really move us forward to where we are now. And so both Dustin and I, when we started, we were not part of Bio-Techne. We were Novus Biologicals, which is a smallish biotech company, mainly focused on antibody sales in Littleton, Colorado. And so antibodies are proteins that really move, carry messages around in your body, used mainly for research for what we were targeting. And Novus largely targeted academia. So slightly lower price point than big pharma, but better from a growth model. And one of the big things that the company did to differentiate itself from all the other antibody companies was maintain a really large product base. So the OEM sales model, where we were pulling in lots of third-party products, and just a little bit more science. But so the way antibodies work and the way you run the experiments on them is you typically make them. They have to stand out from the rest of sort of the goo that's going on in the science in the experiment. And so the way you do that is you conjugate them and turn them a different color. So what you're able to do is you're able to take, a T-shirt from another vendor, and so that T-shirt stands out in the crowd. You dye it green. And so what we do is, you're able to get a very huge product base if you start doing that, because you're able to take one T-shirt and turn it into 20 other T-shirts. And so what we ended up with was a 350,000 product catalog, or products in a product catalog. And we were doing that with about 60 employees and around $20 million in annual revenue. We had a small office in the UK, and we have a small office in Canada. It was a single website that was supporting all of these products. We had a very limited in the sense that the different product categories were fairly controlled. So we had a known product line set, and all our tools were built up to support that. You still have to have tools that can support 350 1,000 SKUs, but they're focused in these specific areas. We have, you maintain limited resources with that site company, and have relative controls. Like, we weren't looking to, gamble everything on one big risk. It was, let's keep those steady growth curves. Let's make this a business that's that everybody wants to come to work to. And so the result of that is we have, great culture, pretty cool stuff that's going on, but still very homegrown. And the approaches are not necessarily at an enterprise scale. And that's represented with we have one core application that really powered everything. And so, I mean, I don't think this is it's not a completely unique story until we get acquired. So about 3.5 years ago, we were acquired by Bio-Techne. At that point, which was about 5 brands, 1,000 employees, 15 locations globally. It doubled our SKU count, and kind of blew our revenue out of the water. And the 2 reasons that they acquired us were for this product catalog of 350,000 SKUs to add to theirs, like give that breadth of antibodies that they didn't have. The R&D Systems, the main brand in Minneapolis, has about 30,000 products, and so this big jump there. The other thing that they didn't have was an IT team to support product growth. A lot of the systems there are still on paper. And but at that point, we went into an organization that had a 10-person IT team in the Minneapolis office of about 600 people. So, like, at this point, you realize, okay, there really isn't a plan here. There really isn't a lot of direction, and the nice, reassuring part is they really did acquire us with the intention of keeping the IT staff around. So what we do is we start, okay, here's where we go into sort of a rapid startup growth model, but doing that in this large enterprise umbrella. And that's convincing everyone that we need to start doing SEO. We need to get the website to be something that's usable. How do we actually scale this so that we can integrate all these brands from a back-end systems perspective, but not lose any of the branding and a lot of the work that has gone into building each of these relationships with customers. And so my computer is going to force me to restart or change my password here in a minute. So again, we have from all the work I've done over the years, we have one of the we have some of the larger opportunity than we've ever had before, or I've ever had before. And so that's where we start tackling how are we going to move this forward. And that's everything from the web team, but to get all the website stuff and all of this product data moving around, we need a way to do that. And so that's where Solr really became the tool that we use to power a lot of this growth and really help to organizationally pull everything together. So now we're excited. We know we're sticking around. We have the technology. We have the team. We've got the vision, and we better pull something off really, really fast, because what we have built internally works really, really well for the 350,000 products that we have, and it doesn't quite work right when you bump that number up. And that's where Dustin comes in and talks about how we're going to survive.
So, as Pete was saying, we're going to call it a monolith because that's exactly what it is. That monolith is specifically geared for Novus Bio, and it doesn't accept in new types of products, especially when we don't have any logic for it or anything built into it. So it made it extremely difficult initially. So at just before Bio-Techne acquired us, our current Solr landscape was essentially exporting flat files in XML format and then curling them out to Solr. And what that was doing at that point in time was just powering search for Novus's website. Again, our custom product information management system was not robust enough to be able to start handling anything like this. We were generating static product detail pages and syncing them out to the site. And we had a really complicated proxy architecture to keep all this stuff kind of tied together. And then to top it off, we were doing everything live. Our development system was our staging system, which was also our production system. So if we made a mistake, it was very difficult to roll back. Hopefully we got everything. So when we got acquired, this is when we decided we actually needed a plan to go forward. We needed to start building our pages, our product data pages from Solr dynamically, which greatly reduced any hiccups we had, maybe exporting those XML files or any network drops that we had. This way we could shoot the data directly out to Solr and the website would pick it up and dynamically create the page based off the product type. And we also realized that we were in too much of a cowboy coding state, so doing everything live is not always good. So we realized that we need a continuous integration and development process and actual testing. That way somebody creates a dummy product to kind of test with in our monolith application, it doesn't get synced out and displayed on the website. So that was a nice little hiccup that we had back then. So initially we had a search schema set up for Novus, which grew into a product schema for Solr. But then we also had data on the websites that wasn't searchable. So we had to create a full site search schema. And Bio-Techne coming on with 5 other sister companies at that time, well, we're starting to duplicate code and duplicate work. So we realized that we needed to start consolidating the schemas, getting everybody into one point of truth. So when you start tying all this stuff together, because there's really a lot of field types and fields that are almost identical or completely identical, and we're just wasting space. It's not easy to manage at all. And at the same time, every night we're doing full document updates. So this process is taking anywhere from 6 to 8 hours just to go and roll through. So that's when we decided that we really need to start harnessing Solr's atomic updates and maybe trying to figure out a way to be able to push data like that through in smaller pieces. So we're starting to think about like a message-based architecture that we could create and have on-premise and externally. So our current vendor at the time, they were good for Novus. They were good for our product search. But as soon as we started adding in our product details and our full site search and then adding multiple sites to this, it proved that it wasn't flexible or scalable or reliable enough for us. So that's what we started going for. Pretty much a platform as a service. And SearchStax had one of the better looking interfaces that we had seen and flexibility that they boasted about on their site. So we decided to take it for a try. And it did everything that we were exactly looking for. We were able to scale it. It was flexible enough at the time. It still is. And it's definitely proven to be reliable. It's been cost effective for us. The ease of access, the manageability for Solr, including the Solr configuration file, the Solr schemas, any text files that we want to associate with it, any jars we want to put out. We're all able to do that. And on top of that, it comes with monitoring and notifications built right into it, which is a big plus for us. We're able to see any issues that come up before they scale into something larger.
And they didn't pay us to say that.
So here's we've got our internal database that's exporting flat files, and we're throwing them out to Solr, and there's only one site. So after Bio-Techne acquired us, this quickly expanded. We needed to do this for multiple sites and have it done in an efficient and effective manner and completely reliable.
And one of the things that you can, it's a little tricky to see here, but what we ended up doing was also tying together downstream systems. So we had, you know, our internal database right here, but to get the data into that, like we were running through the Minneapolis office, and then to get into the Minneapolis office from the UK office, because we didn't have a direct pipe through that, like you see, all of a sudden we start adding a chain where this is, you know, this is +5, this is +5 to the total time to make it through, and we have a mess that's scaling out really, really quickly, and something that's, you know, we're not. Again, to like, how do we be a big enterprise company and do this in a way that's going to carry us through and match the acquisition model that we currently have. So
this is the future. We're probably halfway there. So we've eliminated a few custom applications that either can break easily on occasion, or there's too many points of failure that are too hard to track down on occasions. So this is our model going forward. We're pumping data into a message queue, and then message queue is being read by another application that's running in Azure, and that application sends the atomic updates over to Solr for each website. So how did we start to get there? We started looking into several different applications that would help script things along. So stand-up boxes, and be able to customize them on the fly and without having to do anything, you know, push the button. So we discovered Jenkins, and we started playing with that and getting our applications deployed and everything in big boy pants kind of style. Instead of having to manage it and do it on our own and hope that we got all of our changes in and deployed to the appropriate spots. So that eliminated a lot of that. And then we found Docker, and we started scripting out identical in-house copies of our production site and our stage site. So what this is allowing us to do is to rapidly make schema changes, have A/B testing done on them, and be able to gate our changes out before they go live, because I'm sure that we've had some situations where making a change to a field, especially its field type, has broken, you know, a search for something that's very common and heavily used.
So go through that, yeah, will allow us to decouple a lot of the pieces that have been really stuck together and move forward with that.
So to get our message queue going, we decided to look at Azure a little bit and look into their queue storage and blob storage. And that proved to be a reliable way to publish data out from internally to a message queue, and then have our subscriber or an application listening to that queue and be able to take that data, map it, and send it out to Solr. And we've gotten this currently down to about a half a second for an update. So that's a few data points that would come through, get published to the queue, application picks it up and sends it out.
Yeah, and for a process that was taking, half a day to upwards of a day if things went sideways, like this is huge improvements. So.
So going down the continuous integration and development path, having these internal sites for development as well as testing has given the end user the ability to go through and apply boost to their search, be able to test them out. It doesn't hinder anything with the web development side. It doesn't hinder anything on the systems development side, and everybody can keep going forward through their own pipelines and still be able to gate this and be able to control this. And then this is also allowing us to consolidate our schemas a lot easier, taking into consideration that one entity or one brand wants to search fields a specific way. So another brand or entity wants to search the same fields a different way. So we're starting to consolidate the data points and what they mean.
And I mean, this is represented even within our own organization for something as simple as what do we want to call the proteins category. Like one group wants to call it just proteins, and another group wants to call it proteins and enzymes.
And then there's another one wants to call it proteins and
peptides.
Yeah.
So you have to organizationally have to be set up that we're going to reach a point where we agree on what we call our biggest product line. But we also need to be able to move all of this forward so we can come to that decision. So yeah.
So having multiple schemas per website was really proving to be unmanageable. Occasionally change was expected to go out that may or may not have gotten out because you're managing up to 18 different schemas, which gets very, very cumbersome. So the other thing that was starting to happen was web developers were getting confused on what one data point meant for one brand or entity and what it meant for another one. So data points were starting to get crossed and misused or used for the wrong purpose. So what this is starting to do is taking out the confusion for that. So now our marketing team can be able to go to a tool that we set up to be able to test out different boost changes and know exactly what that field contains and how it's going to analyze and filter and tokenize that everything that's in that search bucket is what we call it.
So yeah, we're kind of alluding to various points in the process. And so one of the things that we needed to do to get to bring all this together, the web is our main sales tool right now. That's where customers interact with all of our products. And so we needed a way to say, okay, here's that variation that allows one to be proteins and peptides, and here's the products that are associated with it. But we also on the back end need to know that all these protein products fit under this one template type, and we've standardized around that. And so what that allows us to do is, have the variation where necessary, but have that standardization that moves us towards the concepts of like shared shopping carts and shared catalogs and all of this, so that when I'm ordering cross-brand and doing all this, I have a single way to search and I have a single way to get all of those products back. And so if you're doing that search and one brand may not have the products you're looking for, but once we've consolidated everything into this single schema, what we're able to do then is say, okay, here are the other brands that actually have this product. And so you expand that umbrella of what is a Bio-Techne, but also still maintain that brand specific content. And so that's been one of the things, as well as it allowed us to consolidate a lot of our web platform, because as each one of these schemas splintered, you had downstream consuming code that also differed. So you see the blowout of this is exponential in the downstream effects of not having data consolidated. And then the flip side was that you turn that back and we create a consolidation for the data. So
yeah, and so again, that's starting to create those standardized data points that each member from each marketing team knows in that. It gives us the flexibility to actually share field types and fields across all the brands. So let's say, for instance, one website's doing search one way, and it's been effective and efficient, and another brand has been tracking that and watching it, and now they want to use that same field type, but we can easily expand our schema to add a new copy field for them to be able to use that same type of data in that same fashion.
There's some really cool benefits from going through that consolidation, and it's just the ebb and flow of let's move this forward and then realize you've gone too far in one direction and then start to pull it back.
And another thing that also gives us is a single point of reference. So initially when we came on with SearchStax, I believe we chose a deployment that was too small. It was keeping up pretty well, and then one day it kind of fell flat on its face. So what we were able to do working with SearchStax was be able to set up a dual deployment on some larger boxes that were then put behind a DNS failover, kind of a heartbeat listening to one. And if that one starts going down, it automatically flips back over and we can quickly recover. So having all of these flow through this to a single point gives us a much clearer view of exactly what's occurring where.
So yeah, and kind of diving into the Drupal side of it a bit more. I mean, because to get to this point, one of the problems we had is that we're in Drupal or really any CMS. They're good for 1,000 products or 5,000 products, but when we're talking about all of these products, both from just an e-commerce perspective to as well as the product pages and then all of the ancillary pages that are around that, like the amount of content that you end up putting on the site isn't something that a CMS as a manually editable tool is going to be something that can keep up. And that's part of the reason why Novus built its product database the way it did. So you could do that, have that downstream flow into the websites and whatever's really consuming it at that point. And so what we're able to do by moving all the products into this is we're able to just take that, pull that out of the database, pull that out of all of the simplify that whole web stack and dramatically improve performance at the same time, because that was one of our big hits, is that when you start, you put 600,000 products into a database, and all of a sudden you start looking at a small from some of the larger data problems, but a 40 gig Drupal database doesn't like to play well and isn't something that's easily maintainable. And so we simplify a lot of those struggles as well. So it's been something that's proved to be very, very, very valuable. So another thing, speaking of the performance improvements that we saw or were able to leverage. So we use New Relic to monitor our web ecosystem, and so one of the things that, again, working with SearchStax and having that partner relationship with them has proved to be something that's paid dividends time and time again. Was, hey, we use New Relic. Is this something that we can get in? And then we're able to get the plugins added and have the reporting flow through this, so we're able to get that full stack trace into what's going on. Just as you add complexity to any ecosystem, you can monitor pieces independently, but unless you're looking at that whole picture, it's really difficult to tell where the problem is, because you can any ops engineer is going to tell you that CPU is great and we're not maxing out RAM, and I'm not seeing the network card spike, so clearly the problem isn't on this box. But what happens is there's so many things that get masked around that can be causing latency and can be introducing, are we watching deadlocks? Are we watching, I mean, just all of the things that tie through. But when you stop and you say, I'm going to look at this entire picture, you're able to see what's going on. And so you can see, like, when we're coming in and monitoring from end to end, we get that total end-to-end browser time. So like the 7.1 seconds here is that's because we let marketing add all of their own tags to the end of the page, and we kindly let them know what they're doing to the total load time. But what we see is what we control and what we care about downstream from that is when we get into the actual application. You can see the application response times, and then I still think this is a really fun comparison, because you can see the database coming in about 1.3 milliseconds per call, and then the Solr right now. So we've tuned Solr up pretty nicely. Well, working with SearchStax.
So that response time there is awesome in the first place. And I forgot to mention earlier that one of the things that we were able to do with SearchStax is actually have them swap out hard disk drives for solid state drives on those boxes that we're using, as well as increase the memory a little bit. And to be able to do that, I don't remember there being any downtime. I think it was a really successful cutover when that occurred.
Yep. And so we're seeing 9.1 milliseconds here to pull back a document. If we were doing that same query in MySQL, for example, like, the problem is that's not one query, that's 100 queries, that's 300 queries in the case of loading all the product data. And so we cut this down to a single call at 9.1 milliseconds, even though it's not even, we're all AWS for this this set of the world right here. But not guaranteed to be same region, same deployments, all this stuff. So it's proven to be, we saw huge performance improvements when we changed vendors. We've seen big jumps as well as we've gone through the process of optimizing with the measured search team. Nice thing about this also is it also ties all of our alerts together, so you're able to see which part of the stack is going sideways quickly. It lets us drill in at a high level to everything that's going on from the Solr perspective, so we get a good monitor of throughput. Everybody who's trying to send in garbage queries to search, and again, just like typically staying below that 10 millisecond threshold has been fantastic. So that takes us, that wraps up what we have from a presentation perspective. So where we are now, we're about 12 brands, 1,900 plus employees. We've got over 22 locations, which from my perspective sounds really cool, until you start trying to tear out data out of our most recent Italian entity, and they actually have all of the columns in the database in Italian out of their ERP system. So that's been, you get some fun challenges. We've doubled our revenue since we were acquired, and the nice thing is we've taken that number of IT employees and really grown that up. So we've gone through that rapid growth. Again, it's that balance of, like, here you are in startup mode and you're doing this in a large enterprise. So we've got a clear path forward. It's just how quickly we get there. So That's what we've got.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter and Dustin. That was great stuff. Really appreciate that. Would be great if we can open up to questions. If anybody has anything and would like to ask a question of Peter and Dustin.
I don't have any questions. I'd like to express my admiration for a team that took a problem that big and did such a good job on it.
Well,
That's amazing.
Thank you.
You try to boil the ocean the first couple attempts, and that's
Yeah.
but yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, I've got a couple of questions via chat, so let me ask those. So we've got one is, what are some of the challenges ahead from a technology perspective?
Some of our upcoming expected challenges.
Yes.
I'd like to say none.
None. Awesome.
No, I think with each one of these iterations over the process, we clean up. We uncover new problems, and so some of the stuff we've got now, some of the test automation and pulling some of that in, like it's in some early phases. We're doing a lot in Azure, which is a perpetual technological challenge. Some parts of it work phenomenally, and other parts where you realize you're working on their alpha version, which they've just rebranded as preview. And so some stuff like that where it's like this looks like it's going to work, and we have everything fall out from underneath us, and that's been a lot more common in the messaging implementation. Beyond that, we do as we're consolidating indices, we're having to look at how we optimize that. Like we're putting a lot more of our eggs back into one basket, and so there's risk associated with that. So it's hardening those clusters and making sure we have everything set up there.
Got it. Cool. I got another chatted question here. So in terms of performance improvements, we saw some, statistics around 9 milliseconds. Can you compare that to where you were before?
We were somewhere over. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, we were in the hundreds of milliseconds to low seconds for what we were seeing before on the previous vendor. Searches were coming back a little faster, but nothing ever faster than about 50 milliseconds. So it was much more of a mom and pop shop before.
Wow. So you were seeing like a 5x, 10x improvement in some cases?
Yeah, easily. And we're moving a significant amount of data. These aren't little tiny calls. Like for a product data page, it pulls multiple megs of data.
Yeah, it can pull up to 50 megs of data on one product.
Nice. Looks like we've got another question coming in through chat. If you were to get one feature or capability from SearchStax in the future, what would it be? That's a great question.
Is a good question. Right now, what we have is working pretty well. The APIs for deployments and spinning up and tearing down instances has been something that we've played with but not fully integrated, and so like that's our next step with what we have, and that piece, unfortunately, like this doesn't answer the question, but that piece is already there. So that's the next thing that we're playing with.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool.